Today's episode is brought to you by HelloFresh. Do you feel like you're stuck in a dinner rut? With HelloFresh, you get fresh, pre-measured ingredients with mouth-watering seasonal recipes delivered right to your door. Skip all those trips to the grocery store. Count on HelloFresh to make home cooking easy, fun, and affordable. You can now enjoy cooking and get dinner on the table in 30 minutes or less. With over 25 recipes to choose from each week, there's something for everyone to enjoy.
All recipes are designed and tested by professional chefs and national experts to ensure deliciousness and simplicity. Go to the link in our show notes to get $80 off, including free shipping on HelloFresh, the #1 meal kit. And hit record.
Because we are so live right now.
Okay. Say something.
Something. Do we have questions for the roundtable? That's a nope. I got poems ready. I got the board game ready.
It'd be nice if it was more organized.
It's not going to be organized. That'll be fun.
Blah, 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 blah,
Right
blah.
back.
Literally.
We're doing it live.
We're doing it live. Quite fun.
Theoretically, if we didn't prepare and haven't...
Yeah, we're figuring stuff out.
I think Edupodlooza broke the internet.
It probably did.
I think it
probably did. So does anyone have any, follow-up questions that they wanted to ask someone? We got about 30 more minutes here, and I'm not any more prepared now,
so brings me to a question that I'm always asking myself, which is, so when I prep my my interviewees, unlike Brad, I do a lot of editing because I'm not as comfortable just letting it all out there, and I'm always saying I'm not a gotcha journalist. If there's ever something that you say, just let me know and I will take it out. No questions asked. And I've had quite a few, I shouldn't say quite a few, but maybe 5 to 10 guests be like, hey, I mentioned this, or actually, can we skip that question? I'm reflecting on that, or my administrator, I don't think I'd want them to hear that, and all of that. But at the same time, I do want to get at the source of people's talking points and their own narrative too. We all have the story that we tell about ourselves, and sometimes a conversation can help you rethink that. Do you guys think about where that line is in your interview? Pushing people, not pushing people? I ended an interview and I still reflect if I should have or shouldn't, because I was I no longer can keep having this conversation. I feel like what you're saying is antithetical to my beliefs. I believe the things that you're saying are a racist ideology. I think I'm going to hang up now. And so I think should I have kept that person on? Should I have kept, do you guys ever struggle with that push and pull of being both a podcaster, but also being I want the story?
I mean, Mealey, we've had boring guests, but I don't think we've ever had contentious guests at all.
I mean, we do have the episode which shall not be named, which is in a file that never to be released because we had.
That was a contentious guest. That was just a friend of ours who was a little too comfy and didn't follow any of the rules we set for them. So
yes.
they started off by talking just about Jesus and Christianity and what our religious beliefs are, and then started talking about Donald Trump, and we're we just need you to education. Can we just talk about education?
We told
and
her,
then they went a 20-minute rant about Johnny Cash.
Yeah, so she was a teacher that I knew I wanted to have on.
Release the Mealey cut.
Do you know those teachers that every time you're in a room with them, you are just your face hurts from smiling and your stomach hurts from laughing? And so that's who she was. And I'm like, oh my God, we have to have her on the podcast. She's hysterical. She'll be so much fun. And we're and she doesn't listen when you tell her stuff. So we told her, this is going to be an education podcast, and it's called Unprofessional Development. And we're going to talk about teaching and, have conversations and get into teaching practices. And we had a list of questions to ask her and all that kind of stuff. And so we put the mic down in front of her. She's so what are we going to do? Are we going to talk about politics and religion? What's the name of this podcast even? Is it good? We call it blobbity blobbity. I can't remember what she wanted to call it. She had some other name for the podcast.
3 names to call the podcast. We're
no,
we have a name.
That's what the name is, and just stream of consciousness. And
she forcefully hijacked that conversation.
And truth be told, once she started, I'm ooh, Like, here's a breadcrumb. Let's go down this nonsense. You know what I mean? Tudisco's like kept trying to bring it back, and I kept going, nope. Let's. What?
Did you start talking about fantasy football or anything?
It just went everywhere, and just talking about circumcision and.
I really want to hear this now.
I really want to hear it. You have to release it now.
Just do
it sounds like it's made up.
Don't do the audio, just us reacting to what we're hearing.
Yeah, I'll do reaction video. Yes.
I'll throw the file in the DM, and if you guys say you think I can get it released without getting fired, then we'll think about it. But I don't think we will, honestly, because it's just too much.
But Mealey, what would you do if like somebody came on and like was arguing with us or was saying things that were just blatantly not true?
Oh wow!
Like I don't know what I would do, to be honest. Like I'll have to be in that situation to find out.
Well, we could do some role playing right now. We could just be contentious.
Well, I mean, the data doesn't lie, y'all. It's the fact.
But I think what all of this goes to is like vetting your guests, like that, and granted, like what you were just saying, Mealey, like you get those people that you think are, yeah, we can have this conversation, and you're like, oh, oops. So then you have to manage that, but most of the guests. My format has changed. I'm doing a roller coaster, and I say has changed. Like it's this way. I started out just me, then I invited voices, and then I went back to just me. But I sometimes have some guests come in. But usually, the people that I'm drawn to are people who are really disrupting educational normalcy, and I want to go deeper with them. So there's not really this space for, fortunately, I haven't run into that conflict, controversy type of thing. So that's been a plus for me. But I suppose if I did run into it, depending on what it is, as educators, Mealey said it best, like we always have to think about our jobs, So if we were just maybe in the corporate sector, private sector, or entrepreneurs, we could have some of those conversations and really, really push and go deeper and challenge some people's thought processes. But I feel like that's the elephant that's always in front of us. Like, and not just in guests in the podcast. This is just in general, like what we sharing our thoughts on social media, engaging in a conversation. Like we always have to be on. We always have to be mindful. And some things we choose not to engage in because we know the risk. And that's kind of frustrating in education a little bit.
Literally, Tudisco, probably 8 out of 10 people that I told we were starting a podcast and it was going to be about teaching and it was called Unprofessional Development. How many of them looked at you like, dude, you're going to get fired? Like, how many times so many people told me that. They're like, are you sure you should do that? Aren't you worried about your job? Like, I got told that. So my dad told me that, like my fellow teachers told me that, like other people, have told me people that we'd asked to be on. They're like, oh, I'm not coming on there, and I'm not losing my job. So have you guys had that experience as well, or is that relatively unique?
I almost was fired.
Oh,
really?
Okay,
yeah.
Go ahead.
Go on.
So it was actually not specifically for the podcast. It was for a blog post I wrote, but I was definitely given a legal mandate from my legal department and told if I didn't have that removed, I was gone. And so I have become very well versed in what my contract says and where it reaches my First Amendment rights. And so it's it's one of the things I talk about. You look at Shane's all black bunker room. There was a running joke for a while that I was podcasting out of a bunker somewhere in Florida because I don't specifically say where I teach, what district I'm in, what part of the state I'm in. Those are things I don't say because Brad Sheffler, host of the Planning Period podcast and Twitter personality or whatever else you want to call me, is not the same person that has a day job every single day and works for someone else. So there's
your name. You have a different name?
Well, it's the same name, but but they are very separate personalities online. There's never a direct reference to my district or my school or anything else on any of my public stuff. And so, it's absolutely a consideration for me because those two things have to be kept separate. And people have said to me before, in fact, with my recent promotion to assistant principal, I was asked again, like, well, are you going to keep doing that? Like now you're board appointed. It's different now. And I'm like, well, technically it's not, like in terms of legally it's not, but yes, there is a consideration. So, it's definitely something to think about. What I try really hard to do is not let it impact what I say on my show. You know, there's times where I will want to write a tweet and I don't write that tweet sometimes. Like there's definitely times where I'm like, all right, maybe not the right place for that. And it's never like the actual ideas that are problematic. It's usually the phrasing that I decide is what I should rewrite. But you know, for the show, I try not to. It's never kept me from pushing back against something. And I guess I should put it that way. If somebody comes on my show and says something and I'm like, ugh, you know, one of the questions I ask all the time, all my guests, is what is the biggest problem facing education today? And I get all kinds of answers. Yeah, I get. You're not wrong. But, you know, sometimes I've had to push back and be like, really? You think like that's the biggest problem, like of all things? And like, or do you really think that's the problem? Or is, you know,
parking spaces? We don't get good enough parking spaces.
Exactly.
That's
like,
the problem.
Come on. Give me a little more.
You took my magic wand answer. How dare you, Mealey?
So, yeah, but I mean, it's definitely happened. And I will tell you that was a very terrifying experience for me and very frustrating and angering because, like, I was like, are you kidding me? Because the particular post was not actually political or questionable. It was something else. But
Can you tell us what it is? I'm so curious.
So I was writing a blog post for Microsoft, actually. I wrote a blog post for Microsoft talking about how we were using OneNote in our school. At the time, no one else was using it the way we were. And so it was like a post and they posted it on the Microsoft blog. And that was the line, apparently.
That was it?
Well, the reason was one of my screenshots included the corner of our district logo. And I said the name of our school at one point. And so their argument was I was representing myself as an employee of this district and promoting a product. And that could be construed as the district promoting that product. And I was like, but you literally bought it for us.
You're going to get fired. You'll do something way cooler.
Right.
You know, I have some thoughts. I feel like I have been thinking about this exact thing deeply a lot lately because of the idea of career path. And there is so many people in education that become position bound. Maybe they want to be a leader, but there's only one or two leadership positions at their school, and then they feel stuck. And we are living through the democratization of everything because of the internet. Like you can have a podcast, you can have a blog, you can create a product and actually go to market and sell it. But where is the line between when your intellectual property is your own, but because you're working at a school where a lot of your ideas and learnings happened, they feel that there is some, like, I feel like that is a space that in the next 2 to 3 years, we are about to see so much gray area emerge. I feel like I'm dancing in it a lot. Full transparency, my podcast is sponsored by my school. You want to talk about really, I feel like I won't go too deep into that, but it's really a fascinating, constant space. Or like Brad, I have been reading a lot of my policies and procedures and contracts very closely because this does open up so many opportunities starting a podcast. But then do they own all those opportunities that I now have come my way because they sponsored the podcast?
Well, I know in our district, there was a real push because, I mean, honestly, it's because probably teachers were taking like school cameras with them on vacation and taking photos of their vacation and stuff, which I don't think that's a good idea. So they became very clear that, you cannot use school equipment for anything that you create out of work time. So like I had to go and I was using like cords from the band program and mic stands from the band room. So I had to go buy my own mic stands and my own cords and use my own laptop, my own 9-year-old MacBook Pro that I'm currently using. Just to make sure that I was above board. I talked to my principal. He's like, well, I guess you can use the Wi-Fi at school for it. It's like, oh, thank goodness. But I mean, on the flip side, I have, let's say I know a person and they have been working on a product, an educational oriented product that they are very close right now to selling for mid 6 figures, maybe more, and possibly even making a career out of this as well. But they have been very careful all the way along about making sure that it is theirs 100%, like not using any school resources. Because I mean, I don't know what it is for all of you, but I mean, in my school district, by definition, anything you make in the building, like if I draw a happy face on a piece of paper, that belongs to the school district as part of my creative output. And
yet we have one of the highest rates of attrition of most careers. You think someone would start thinking like, oh, the name of the game in the 21st century is agility and adaptability. Maybe we could find a way to create more flexibility in these positions so that people can see their career path go in different ways within the educational space without needing to go like, ooh, that's yours, that's mine. And if I want to leave, I got to cut and run and become a private entity that's doing all this work.
It's run like a lot of like they said, private entities, right? I mean, you go to Disney, you can't make a movie off the side of your desk while you're working because that's theirs. So
I mean, yeah, that's one practice that I feel like education actually lines pretty closely to industry there, you know, so like Shane said, I've done a lot of side projects and stuff too. So that's one of those things where that stuff never touches a district laptop. That stuff is never done on school Wi-Fi. It is like, if I have to do something, like even if I'm staying, sometimes I'll stay after my contract hours because I'm going to a concert that night to support the school or whatever. And I'm working on stuff. I pull my hotspot up on my phone and I work on my personal laptop. Like, it doesn't touch district network. It doesn't touch district computers ever. The podcast has never, there's a sticker for the podcast on my school laptop, only because that lets me know it's mine. But that's the closest those two things have ever come to each other.
Interesting.
That's going to change the way that I operate, because I'm glad that we had this conversation, because I never really made those considerations around, like using Wi-Fi or school laptop or anything like that. It's fascinating.
Particularly the Wi-Fi.
Seems crazy.
I was going to say, as we're sitting here and I'm looking into the camera of my school,
you're like, oh
out
no.
of state. I mean, where things, I think anyway, are a little bit different. So my charter management company gives me a lot of autonomy. I've been with them for a long, long time. So, but it is something to definitely consider. Those are things I've never even thought about.
I worry about it hearing it on other people's shows sometimes. I mean, genuinely, because it's like, it's not something you think about until it's too late in most cases. I mean, I was lucky in my case that I got the warning. I wasn't just immediately fired. I feel like I was lucky there. But it's like, I hear other people's shows and I'll listen to them say something and I'm like, ooh, that scared me. That was not a smart, like, you don't attach those two things together. Like, keep that separate.
One of my former principals, it's a legacy statement now. She would always say, it's not a problem until it's a problem. And when it is a problem, oof, so yeah, that's the thing. There's just so many things to think about. And Aviva, I think it was you, maybe Natalie, I can't remember because it was earlier in the conversation, but the one frustrating thing about all of this is education should be the one space where we, among many others, but education should be the space where we celebrate and amplify innovation, creativity, thinking outside of the box, modeling for students to be those risk takers and invent, create, design, be the architect of our thoughts. And it's punitive.
Exactly.
Are proprietary and not beneficial for us. So, those are the things that are just disappointing.
And if we're going to launch butterflies, I mean, the circle's right back to what you were saying earlier, Traci. Like, think of all the fear that was just shared around the circle. As Brad shared his story, and we're like, oh my God, Charles is looking into his computer screen, like putting black tape over it. Like, we should never be living in fear. And it creates so much fear, and that is not where learning lives. That's not where innovation lives, like you're saying. So I really think this is something that those in educational positional power, I guess, or maybe all of us at the grassroots with a microphone and an audience need to keep talking about, because I do think it's problematic big time.
Maybe this is the first topic of the Butterflies podcast. I mean, I've got a page full of notes right here. but yeah, just wow.
My question for Charles and Brad, and is anyone else in an admin or hiring, firing position at their school? Like, you have a candidate and maybe they've put their podcast on their resume. I'm assuming you're going to check it out. You listen to it and you're hearing things that don't align with your own philosophy. Yet the interview that you did with them, they ticked all the boxes. Like, are you going to feel okay denying or agreeing to give them a job when during the official district or school interview, that's where you got some information, but then you got outside information through their podcast?
I'm very excited about this question.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I don't know if there's any necessarily rules around it. My gut is like, I would love to do a follow-up conversation. And I will let them know that. Like, I listened to your podcast. You said X, Y, and Z, which really goes against, our school culture, our beliefs, our philosophies. And I would love to follow up with you, right? My concern is, right, and I know I've been in this position. People say amazing things during an interview, and then you get them in the building and you're like, who are you? Right. And so if we can avoid that, like up front, then I think that's best for all parties involved, right? And I'm super transparent. Like, I would say that to that individual, like, because this is what we're going to hold you accountable to, this practice, this philosophy. And if you believe this other thing, it's going to be really rough for you. It's going to be rough for the kids. It's going to be rough for me. Like, I just want to make sure I want this to be a good fit for you as well, right? So I don't know. I mean, my gut is that if I go and listen to that show and there's something that's just like you are, I don't know, a bigot or something, I'm going to be like, I don't know if this is the right spot for you. But at least I'm going to have an opportunity to have a conversation. I'm not just going to be like, nope. You know, I'll do a follow-up.
So I think, to me, the specifics are, and I should preface that my actual bachelor's degree is in business administration and entrepreneurship. So I kind of have a not enough information to make informed decisions about HR practices. But what I will say is, if the candidate puts it on their resume, it's now part of their resume. So I think that's critical. So like, my podcast is, depending on which version of my resume and who I'm sending it to, my podcast might be on my resume. And then at that point, I know that whoever's reviewing that resume, my podcast now speaks for myself, you know? So I think that's important. Whereas if I did a Google search on them and found their podcast on my own, I think that would be a slightly different position for me to be in. But I will say, if I listen to a podcast and they say, and it's their show and they talk about something that completely doesn't align with the vision of our school, then kind of like Charles said, it's not a good fit for me. It's not a good fit for them. And like, it's only going to cause problems for all of us involved. It's definitely going to be part of my decision-making for sure.
While I'm not an administrator, I've participated in several hiring committees. And one thing we typically do is, whoever we're interested in, based on the applications, we're checking them out first, like before we even call them in. Like, what is your social media presence? And not just what are you posting, but what are you liking and retweeting? What are you sharing? And, we might learn about a podcast after the fact, possibly, or something that you have to go check out. But, a lot of times you may have enough information that they've shared, because a lot of people include their resume as an attachment to the application, where you can kind of screen some of that too on the front end.
Yeah, I'm in this space, so fingers crossed, green cards will come in and I'll be applying for jobs. And like, my husband and I have this conversation where he's like, it's a really good representation of your teaching, but like, sometimes maybe if it's a more conservative district and you've said some things on the podcast, but part of my thinking too is like, if someone listens to the things I've said and then decides I'm not a good fit for their school, like, good, because I wouldn't want to be in a situation where, the things that I hold fundamentally dear to my teaching practice are going to be in contrast with their philosophy either.
So, yes. And I don't know how closely you all watch like your analytics, but I can definitively say that my district leadership Googles candidates into the assistant principal process, because I can watch my analytics of my guests who I know are going through that process, and they will always get a search hit that they didn't usually get. Like, it's all of a sudden they'll get a spike in search results, and I've definitely know for a fact that it's done at my district, and so it's a tough line of like. But I think, like you said, Aviva, if they disagree with something I said on my podcast, like, I stand by what I said on my podcast all the time. I've actually had parents try to use it against me in an argument one time. And I'm like, yeah, but I meant that. So like, I don't really care. Like,
I'd just be like, hey, thanks for listening. Wow.
I didn't know you were a fan.
In this specific case, I said, actually, I still think that 7th graders are soulless little monsters stuck in the middle between 6th and 8th graders. Like, I stand by it. I don't know what you really have a problem with.
For me, honestly, like, I have the fear, but like, it's not even fear of like, oh, did I say something bad? Because I know I watch myself. Like, I know I haven't said anything horrible or controversial. I'm worried that I'll be robbed of opportunities just because I have a podcast, like, without even people listening to it. So like, I got a new job over this year. This last year I was at a new school, and during the interviewing process, they asked me like, oh, is there anything else we should know? And in my head, I'm thinking, you should probably know I have a podcast, but I'm not going to say it. And I just didn't, and I got the job. So I don't know how correlated those two things are. But
if you suddenly notice like one extra listen and you get fired the next day.
Yeah. I was going to say, what gives me peace is I'm Facebook friends with
Tony Danza, we know.
I was taking a drink right now. I couldn't get it out.
Shots.
With quite a few people in my district, and I see the stuff that they put on Facebook, and I am like, if they can get away with that and they still have a job, if I was looking to move, maybe I'd be a little more afraid of someone interviewing me and Googling me and seeing stuff. And obviously they're going to want me to come to their school because I know Tony Danza. But but I see this stuff and I'm like, oh my goodness, you guys are like crazy, the stuff that you put out there. And so that makes me feel less afraid because I'm like, okay, if all those things are out there, when I first got hired 10 years ago, I had much greater fear because they gave this whole speech, you learn about bloodborne pathogens and you learn about
I'm sorry, what?
Bloodborne pathogens.
Oh, I thought you said bloodbirds. And I was
that's part of your teacher training?
I don't know.
That's not what my orientation
football team. Yeah.
You may become a vampire and sort of.
Yes. So bloodborne pathogens is like the thing. Okay. Is it just my district that teaches that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe I'm weird.
If a kid gets a nosebleed, run away. So, but then after they teach you the bloodborne pathogens, the next thing they say is that we have someone whose job it is to watch the social media. That's their job. And when I saw that, I'm like, oh my goodness. I wasn't on social media at the time. I'm like, oh my goodness. It's like, I can't go on social media. They'll hear that. And now that I've been on Facebook and social media for a while, I'm like, your job is literally to watch the social media of a district that has 20,000 teachers and 150,000 students.
Well, Mealey, they needed to know who your top friends were on MySpace.
How is that working out for you?
Mealey, that job doesn't exist the same way that the district forensics team didn't exist, even though we told the students that their phone was being tracked to find out where they were sending these aggressive emails. That's not a job. Tactic. If they're not paying for poster paper, they're not paying for someone to sit.
and that's what it is. All the rules.
And we don't mention our district, but we do work in a relatively large district, and there are lots of people that work, as the word is, downtown, that have stupid, pointless jobs. There is, the Department of Redundancy department is hiring on a daily basis. So there may be or may not be someone that's doing that. But even if there is, unless my tweet goes ridiculously viral, there's no way for them to know amongst the 50,000 tweets, 8,000 Facebook posts, and 9 million TikToks and Instagram and all. How are you going to do that?
Just as long as you don't really piss off someone that works downtown and they have a personal vendetta against you.
Right.
That happened to me, but it may or may not be related to the almost fired story. I don't know. It wasn't me. It wasn't me.
We had my dad on the podcast, and we'll get into play the game here in just a minute. But we had my dad on the podcast, and he mentioned this thing that when he taught a long time ago. But I think you remember this, Tudisco. He had to fill out this daily form, right? And he had to circle something or put a circle somewhere. They got him, they brought him, however they documented, because his circles weren't the right size. So I do hear that, Brad, that if someone decides to come after you, I'm sure they can find something stupid that I said, whether in person on the podcast in the break room or whatever. I've shared this one, I think, on the podcast before, and I apologized to the kids the next day, but it was my first year teaching, and the kids were out of hand, and I looked at them, and they were just acting crazy, and I looked at them, I said, what is the problem? I said, is the nurse out of Ritalin? And so that probably wouldn't go over very well, right? That one I don't want to be quoted on. And, and it wasn't.
He says, broadcast to the internet.
Yes, right.
Statute of limitations for stupid things.
Yes, and I apologized the next day and said, "Hey, I understand that this is a thing," and I went, into I backpedal.
No one's going to come after any of us because we're all so lovable. So not a fear anybody should have.
If they want to come after you, they can make up stuff. They can lie and all that kind of stuff.
That's the plus side. Is I just litter the internet with all of my thoughts, and you'd have to spend a lot of time sifting through all of it to find that thing. And if you're willing, all right, cool, you just gave me more analytics. That helps me with my next job after I get fired. So whatever, it's fine.
So,
what chapter are you up to in his internet search? Well, he's rocking some eggs and bacon for breakfast. The orange juice went bad.
Yes. Something about an Edupodlooza he mentioned 2 or 3 times. Right.
Not even legal.
that Wi-Fi.
Can you imagine getting a bill from your district from like extra Wi-Fi that you use
for like 38 cents?
Juice.
Well, Shane, it would be 38 cents for you in Canada. Internet's expensive here in the States. It would be way more than that.
Way more expensive in Canada, I feel like.
Wait, and cell phones are 3 to 4 times as expensive in Canada than the US.
Yeah, I have a lot of friends and colleagues that use American cell phones because it's cheaper, even with the long distance rates, than it is to have a Canadian cell phone.
You can do that?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, time for a side room discussion here.
Yeah, we'll talk about that later. Hey everyone, my name is Natalie Vardabasso, and I am a Canadian teacher and instructional designer, but most exciting of all, I am also the host of a new podcast called #Educrush. On the podcast, I have the privilege of learning from inspirational teachers, leaders, innovators, and activists who are passionate about what education could be, but they're not just talking about it, they're actually out there making it a reality.
I then started diving in deeper with the intersectionality of math and social justice, activism, racism, because it's pervasive. Racism is everywhere.
You know, I started the school from scratch, and I had to go into living rooms with parents and say, "Hi, how do you like me so far?"
If 2020 has taught us anything, it's that we have a lot of work to do to reimagine schools that allow each student to learn. This is the type of change that is bigger than what any one of us can do alone. But hopefully, together, we can crush it.
So it's time, guys and gals, again to play our admin colleague student game. And so to reiterate the rules of this game, it's kind of like kill, marry, fornicate, only instead you have to choose amongst these 3 individuals, they could be characters or whatever, which one you would want to have as your administrator, which one would you want to have as your colleague, your teacher. We're assuming you're the role, even though we've got some admins here, we're going to say that you're as a teacher, and which one would you want to have as your student. And I have lost track of who has and hasn't played this game over the course of the Podlooza.
I'll step up, Mealey. I haven't gone yet.
Okay. So we haven't yet used Pulp Fiction people, Cosby Show kids. Still got some superheroes, some billionaires.
You know what? I'll go with superheroes.
You'll go with superheroes. Okay. Batman, The Flash, and Supergirl. So one of them has to be your admin, one of them has to be your colleague as a teacher, and one of them has to be your student.
All right. Let's see here. So I immediately think about Batman and, Bruce Wayne with all of his money. So I'm like, do I want him to be my admin? Or would I rather him be my colleague? I think colleague, because I'm sure that we could get into some awesome trouble together. I will say Flash is the administrator, because it could just zip around and get things done in a jiff, right?
And he's problematic as a student.
Yeah. I was like, I don't think I want Flash zipping around a classroom. And I will say Supergirl for a student in the classroom, just an amazing individual, rocking things out, and she could protect me from the bullies in my middle school classroom.
Imagine Flash as your admin, how fast those faculty meetings would go. Oh my goodness. Guys, we got to get through this, that. Done.
Yes. Of course, every fire drill, he would be standing outside and go, "What's taking you guys so long?" So that's it.
You definitely know when you're late.
Yes. So let's go with Natalie. Did you hear anything that appealed to you, or do you want some more choices?
I'm wondering if we can just go to my favorite Canadian TV show, Schitt's Creek, and choose some characters, because that's naturally where my brain.
I don't know the names of their characters.
Okay.
Tudisco, do you know their names?
I've seen it, but
okay.
Okay, you ready?
Some.
Okay.
Let's just go with.
Do you have 3?
I do. I could totally think of 3.
What you got?
Okay. So Dan Levy's character, David Rose, I feel like would be the
AKA
perfect,
the son.
AKA the son. Yeah,
Right.
For anyone who doesn't know the show as well, would be the perfect student, because when you have to keep a straight face in class when like some BS is going down, but you're like, I'm the teacher, I'm a professional. I feel like David Rose would be in the front row, like, ew, and you'd be like, yes, thank you, thank you, David, and it would be perfect. So I feel like David would be a really great student. And in terms
She has
of
a lot to learn.
By the way, you're making this game too easy. So Myra is the mom, right?
Moira, yeah.
Moira. So you've got Moira?
Yeah.
What's the daughter's name?
Alexis.
And what is Chris Elliott, the mayor's name?
Oh, rolling shit.
Yeah. So Natalie, we're stepping up the rigor. Okay, those are your three.
Okay, I like it. I feel like Moira would be really interesting as a colleague because she would say all the things that everyone's thinking in a way that would make everyone have to reflect on. I don't know. I just feel like she'd bring some humor and some entertainment to staff meetings because she would always have something to say. She'd probably come in late and she'd have like a full costume that she'd emerge in like a crow, and there might be smoke. Like someone would be trying to start their staffing, but no, Moira is about to make her entrance and I am here for that. Like, I feel like that is the kind of entertainment I need.
I don't think you would get to the district talking points because it would be all about her
the whole time. She would she'd break into song maybe. Oh,
but I feel like she'd have so many questions at like the end of the staff meeting and make it keep going, and that would drive me insane.
But like it'd be so entertaining that you'd be like, this is fantastic. Like, I've got my popcorn. This is great. That'd be really interesting. Yeah, Roland Shit, I think it actually would be a great principal, admin. Roland Shit would be the admin because he would say all the problematic things that would make it a safe space for me to suck all the Wi-Fi juice for free. So
the district was so busy worrying about him, they wouldn't worry about you.
ISR on, firmly on him. Mm-hmm. So that'd be it.
So can I say that I had an administrator once that was a Moira?
Oh, wow.
Like, I mean... She was wealthy. She didn't have to be in education, but she chose to be. And so she would like just literally come in like these gowns and like.
Oh my!
Yes, it was always a show.
Cool, huh?
It would make you so angry on the one hand, but on the other, you're like, it's entertainment. But you're like, wait, you're making like twice as much as I am. So
she showed up to my grad party, and one of my neighbors was like, "There's somebody here in a Jag." And I was like, "I don't know anybody who drives a Jag." Oh, my boss. Yeah. Okay.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Why do we do what we do? What's the purpose of school? How do we know what works? We don't want to be slaves to data. We shouldn't fetishize pedagogy. We don't want unaccountable, wild, free-form ideas of education that no one can really figure out how they work or if they do. We need honest, sincere dialogue. We need to talk about what really matters, and that's our students, and that's how we help them to learn and grow and improve. What we need is a discussion that includes all aspects of education, from philosophy to policy to pedagogy. You can find all of that, including interviews with authors, community leaders, teachers, students, and more on the ClassCast podcast. Check us out at www.classcastpodcast.com, on YouTube, and streaming on all major platforms. ClassCast Podcast, where real education happens.
Traci, did you hear any categories that jumped out at you?
You said the Cosby Show kids.
Yes.
But I don't know. You guys all know Fresh Prince of Bel-Air characters.
I have a Fresh Prince one as well. Yes.
Okay.
So here's your three: the Fresh Prince, Jeffrey, and Carlton.
Ooh. Oh gosh. Oh boy. And I'm like, Jeffrey, teacher or admin, that's really tough. Why did I go there? I'm gonna go with Jeffrey for the admin and the wisdom. I love him and his servant heart. He's just, I love his character. Will needs to be the student for obvious reasons.
Oh, okay.
If I'm left with Carlton, I don't know where to put Carlton except for in timeout. But Will too, like Carlton, he can't be the teacher because he's Carlton.
Alive.
He's too busy. He's. By the way, if you want to know when the meeting is, what the email said, like what all the rules are that we can't break, Carlton will definitely let you know. But you do not let him in your classroom because he will be just like, you can't do that. You can't say that. You're not allowed to do that.
Yeah, it's like.
But you also do that as your student.
Yeah, they need to be a pair. Will and Carlton need to be a pair, a duo of teacher and then a duo of student, because they're complementary. Like they really do complement each other well, because Will would bring the fun and the vibrancy and Carlton would bring the weight. We can't do this, but you can't have a can't do this teacher 100%, but then you also can't have a life as a party, let's jump off a cliff teacher either. So 100% of the time. Yeah. So they make a great duo, and I know I went off the rails trying to answer that question.
No,
so
the point of the thing is to have fun, but also to like make you think about, you know, what you value in the jobs as well. Mm-hmm. So do we have anyone who hasn't gone? Tudisco, you haven't gone, right?
I guess I have not.
I'm going to give
you throw any one of those at me.
Okay, I'm going just because I wanted it and I'm happy about it. So I want to go Pulp Fiction. Okay, Jules, Vincent, and the star of Pulp Fiction, Honey Bunny.
Jules, Vincent, and Honey Bunny.
Yes.
Man, I'm trying to think of who would be the admin there. I mean, I kind of want Jules to be the admin because I need an admin that students are terrified of. And if your admin is Samuel L. Jackson, like kids, if you say like I will send you to his office, the kids will start shaking. Like that's what I need because I'm too soft. I need a tougher admin to back me up. So I think he would work best with me there. Who is Honey Bunny?
Honey Bunny. She's the star of the movie. She's like, everybody get down. This is a robbery. She's
her.
Yeah, in the coffee shop. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, Honey Bunny needs to be in my class because she's got some problems we need to work our way through. I need to talk to her about some of her life choices. We probably need to get a social worker involved in there somewhere. And then I'm definitely going to say, Jules is not Jules. Vincent is going to be my colleague because I don't know. He can talk to me about what a quarter pounder with cheese is called in France, and like we could just.
He could teach French.
Yeah. And like, I just need that calm banter between classes, you know? Jules be screaming too much. Vincent will just keep it calm. How about you, Mealey?
You want to pick one for me?
Well, those same three. What would you say?
Oh, okay. I think I'm going to keep Jules as my admin. I don't know. Because I do think like he's going to run a tight ship. But also, the only thing I don't like about that is I am scared to like.
Yeah, if I mess up in front of him.
Right. And
he's doing my observation.
Well, it depends. It's do I get beginning of the movie Jules, or do I have enlightened? I'm gonna walk the earth, Jules. Because I'm gonna walk the earth, Jules. Because he has that balance. He'll still kill you. You know what I mean? He's still got the wallet, you know, he'll still handle his business, but he's enlightened and he also wants to you know, you can probably have a conversation with him that's going to be more philosophical about that. And so then Honey Bunny is actually that teacher that we talked about that was on our podcast episode that we haven't released. Like she's not too far from Honey Bunny. I mean, she's not homicidal, but she's not too far from that. So I want her as my teacher just because I know how much fun she will be. And if she's my co-teacher, if she's my colleague, I can be stupider and worse because Jules is going to be having to deal with all the phone calls and all the issues that, you know, happens when she goes off on the podcast. And then I'll take John Travolta Vincent as my student. And he's going to be a little slow and he's going to like, you know, have his issues with his substance abuse. But I think that you know, he's curious. He likes learning things. You know what I mean? So I think that he'll be good as my student.
Wonderful.
Yeah. So I think I just want to say thank you so much for being part of this Podlooza. I love you. It's been so much fun, and I hope you had a good time. And I hope that the people who are listening, hearing, and all that, viewing, and all that get the feel that this is our Edupod family. So you know, yeah.
They're all my Educrush. Thank you so much for putting this together, Mealey.
Yes.
And it was a ton of work behind the scenes. So much fun.
Absolutely.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, so much fun.
We appreciate it. All the lovely, kind reminders.
Yeah.
See you guys.
Yes. Thank you, and stay unprofessional. Stay unprofessional. Stay unprofessional.